We are live.
Happy Friday, everybody. I am Old New Dude. He is.
Richard York, Asher's Trueborn son.
Congratulations to Krista Crow for being first, Sanji for being second, and Lizzie for saying
No!
no. This is Clash of Kings Tyrion 13,
13, yep.
which would be a very good chapter.
I'll get you, Sanji, and your little dog, too. Waving from the vault beneath the sept, surrounded by cobwebs and broken wine casks. Okay.
Is there wildfire down there?
Anyway.
Even though there was seeing Lancel crawling toward the candles underneath the Sept of Baelor, and then having it blow up in his face was actually a really cool visual in the Game of Thrones.
We're dragging already. Did you turn into a dragon? Anyway.
All right. Well, if you've watched any of these, and the 5 people that are here, they definitely have. But to the millions of people that are going to watch in the future, after we're proven right about everything, we start with the brains of the operation, which is Richard. He will say what he saw in the chapter, and then I'll jump on my stupid stuff here and there. So take it away, Richard.
Yes, Tyrion 13, as we said. I'll lead the sortie. Motionless as a gargoyle, Tyrion Lannister hunched on one knee atop a merlin. Beyond the mudgate and the desolation that had once been the fish market and wharves, the river itself seemed to have taken fire. Half of Stannis' fleet was ablaze, along with most of Joffrey's. The kiss of wildfire turned proud ships into funeral pyres and men into living torches. The air was full of smoke and arrows and screams. So, a gargoyle that isn't spitting out water is technically a chimera, or actually, Preston uses the word chimera, but it's chimera. Anyway, according to Genetics of Dragons and War Science Update by Preston Jacobs. It's a video that's less than 3 minutes long, and it discusses how Tyrion is often referred to as a gargoyle, including right here. Chimeras sometimes have 2 biological fathers and 2 different colored eyes. That's what we serve when it's time to break up. Come over for some tea and a talk. Anyway.
Is that what it means by spill the tea?
I'm sorry?
Is that what it means to say spill the tea?
Could be. I do think that there is quite a bit of Tyrion and gargoyle comparisons, and I do kind of like the idea that he could have killed his biological father and yet still had still have the dragons liking him as much or more than they liked Brown Ben.
Well, he's only a half kinslayer then.
Okay, fair enough. Well, no, not really, because his mother's cousin is also Tywin. So.
Well, I mean, I wasn't real big on the 2 daddies for Tyrion, but I am slowly being worn down to agree with that. Especially
if you haven't watched that video, that you should definitely watch the video, because there are a lot of gargoyle references. Anyway, even if his pronunciation might annoy some people, I'm sure I mispronounce things all the time. Downstream commoners and Tyrion Chimera, yes. Downstream commoners and highborn captains alike could see the hot green death swirling toward their rafts and carracks and ferries, borne in the current of the Blackwater. The long white oars of the Mirish galleys flashed like the legs of maddened centipedes as they fought to come about, but it was no good. The centipedes had no place to run. So the term "but it was no good" will always make me think of Jon Stark, seeing the last 90 seconds of Triplet Targaryens episode 2.
The long white oars of the Mirish galleys, what are the oars made of? Are they painted?
Why are they white, or are they made of white wood? Is your question? That's an interesting question.
Yeah. Or is it to give some type of roots type visual? Hey, Mother Rornar.
Hello, Roy.
What did I say?
Yeah. You said Roynar, which should be the people. Roy and Roynar is the people.
Uh, slip of the brain.
Yep. No, I mean they're related. The term was we did that. A dozen great fires raged under the city walls, where casks of burning pitch had exploded, but the wildfire reduced them to no more than candles in a burning house, their orange and scarlet pennons fluttering insignificantly against the jade holocaust. The low clouds caught the color of the burning river and roofed the sky in shades of shifting green, eerily beautiful. A terrible beauty, like dragon fire. Tyrion wondered if Aegon the Conqueror had felt like this as he flew above his field of fire. So I'm sure that the Tyrion Targaryen people would use this as a clue for that. Although we're arguing that if he is a Targaryen, it's like a quarter basically. That he's basically like 3/4 Lannister and 1/4 Targaryen.
Yeah. But is that enough?
I mean, Brown Ben has two drops of dragon blood, right? So
yeah, but is that a reference on him being liked by Danny, and then the dragons liking him because Danny liked him, or is it because of the couple of drops of blood?
Well, I mean, it'll always be ambiguous. I'm just saying.
Right.
I'm just saying that
if it is the couple of drops of blood, then the the couple of drops of blood for what's the Prince Frog and the Dragon
Quentin?
Quentin Martell. I imagine he has a couple drops, maybe even more.
Sure.
So,
oh yeah,
if the dragons like Brown Ben because of a couple of drops of dragon blood, could there be credence to that Quentin is still alive because of his dragon blood? And
I certainly agree I certainly agree with Preston that it's deliberately ambiguous in the same sense that it's more ambiguous than the burning of Mance Rayder or the
the whole damn
Arya
book
taking an axe to the back of the head or so forth, right? I mean,
yeah, he could write two separate series, and one of them be everything was this way, and then the other one was everything was this way, because everything is so damn ambiguous.
Right. And in fact, there are multiple correct answers, and the author confirming one interpretation is correct does not invalidate the alternative interpretation.
Me shaking my head like this is when I'm on chat with the book club and they're Libby's saying something, and I'm driving down the road going like this, and I know the people to each side of me are like, what the hell is wrong with this guy? They can't see me, but I naturally will sit there and nod.
Yep. All right. A dozen great. Wait, no, we already did that because we were talking about field fire. Yep.
Right.
The furnace wind. Yep. The furnace wind lifted his crimson cloak and beat at his bare face, yet he could not turn away. He was dimly aware of the gold cloaks cheering from the hoardings. He had no voice to join them. It was a half victory. It will not be enough. He saw enough of the hulks he'd stuffed full of King Aerys' fickle fruits engulfed by the hungry flames. A fountain of burning jade rose from the river, the blast so bright he had to shield his eyes. Plumes of fire 30 and 40 feet high danced upon the waters, crackling and hissing. For a few moments, they washed out the screams. There were hundreds in the water, drowning or burning or doing a little of both. Do you hear them shrieking, Stannis? Do you see them burning? This is your work as much as mine. Somewhere in that seething mass of men south of the Blackwater, Stannis was watching too, Tyrion knew. He'd never had his brother Robert's thirst for battle. He would command from the rear, from the reserve, much as Lord Tywin Lannister was wont to do. Like as not, he was sitting a warhorse right now, clad in bright armor, his crown upon his head. A crown of red gold, Varys says, its points fashioned in the shapes of flames. That's kind of every crown, as LML would point out. That's kind of what they're meant to symbolize, is the sun.
Yeah.
My ships, Joffrey's voice cracked as he shouted up from the wall walk, where he'd huddled with his guards behind the ramparts. The golden circlet of kingship adorned his battle helm. My king's lanter's burning. Queen Cersei, loyal man. Look, that's Seaflower there. He pointed with his new sword out to where the green flames were licking at Seaflower's golden hull and creeping up her oars. Her captain had turned her upriver, but not quickly enough to evade the wildfire. She was doomed, Tyrion knew. There was no other way. If we had not come forth to meet them, Stannis would have sensed the trap. An arrow could be aimed, and a spear, even the stone from a catapult, but wildfire had a will of its own. Once loosed, it was beyond the control of mere men. Could not be helped, he told his nephew. Our fleet was doomed in any case.
Hey, beyond the control of mere men, do we think that even from her perch on Dragonstone, that Melisandre still has a part to play in the Battle of Blackwater?
I don't think so. She tells us that things would have gone differently if she'd been there to control the flames.
Right, but
So
I
she
mean,
implies that she wasn't able to.
yeah, but in my mind, I'm thinking just the term "beyond the control of mere men" makes me think of
Of
Melisandre's
woman
potential close.
and
Yeah, and
yeah, yeah, that's
that,
interesting. I like that. I like that
but
idea, but
wouldn't she want Stannis to fail without her, to where he doesn't attempt to do this again? Um,
I don't know. Maybe.
well, it's like the storm that
Yeah, it's an
slows
interesting
down the
idea.
ships. Hey, Charles, the
I think
storm that
it's an
slows
interesting
the
idea.
ships down and all that stuff, and then some of the actions of the wildfire. You also get the reference to the tendrils. I
Yes, if
mean,
there was, I mean, we could say that it's Bran or the Great Other,
yeah,
or it could be Melisandre. I like this concept that somebody could really be. We know that people use magic to control the winds, so
yeah.
somebody could be messing with them. Yeah, it's an interesting
Well, I
idea.
mean, anytime you get a phrase from George, I always wonder why he puts
Yeah,
that phrase in there, and
I
that
like it.
phrase right there automatically made me think of Melisandre.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah,
Even from atop the Merlin, he had been too short to see over the ramparts, so he'd had them boost him up. The flames and smoke and chaos of battle made it impossible for Tyrion to see what was happening downriver under the castle, but he had seen it 1,000 times in his mind's eye. Bronn would have whipped the oxen into motion the moment Stannis' flagship passed under the Red Keep. The chain was ponderous heavy, and the great winches turned but slowly, creaking and rumbling. The whole of the usurper's fleet would have passed by the time the first glimmer of metal could be seen beneath the water. The links would emerge dripping wet, some glistening with mud, link by link by link, till the whole great chain stretched taut. King Stannis had rowed his fleet up the Blackwater, but he would not row out again. So anyway, I like I like the fact that he calls it the usurper, right? It's like, sure. Anyway, even so, some were getting away. A river's current was a tricky thing, and the wildfire was not spreading as evenly as he had hoped. The main channel was all aflame, but a good many of the Mirmen had made for the south bank and looked to escape unscathed, and at least 8 ships had landed under the city walls. Landed or wrecked, but it comes to the same thing. They've put men ashore. Worse, a good part of the south wing of the enemy's first 2 battle lines had been well upstream of the Inferno when the hulks went up. Stannis would be left with 30 or 40 galleys at a guess, more than enough to bring his whole host across once they had regained their courage. That might take a bit of time. Even the bravest would be dismayed after watching 1,000 or so of his fellows consumed by wildfire. Hylene said that sometimes the substance burned so hot that flesh melted like tallow. Yet even so,
that makes
Tyrion
me
had.
think of Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Tyrion had no illusions where his own men were concerned. If the battle looks to be going sour, they'll break, and they'll break bad, Jesselyn Bywater had warned him. So the only way to win was to make certain the battle stayed sweet, start to finish. He could see dark shapes moving through the charred ruins of the riverfront wharfs. Time for another sortie, he thought. Men were never so vulnerable as when they first staggered ashore. He must not give the foe time to form up on the north bank. He scrambled down off the Merlin. Tell Lord Jocelyn we've got an enemy on the riverfront, he said to one of the runners Bywater had assigned him. To another, he said, bring my compliments to Sir Arnold and ask him to swing the horse 30 degrees west. The angle would allow them to throw farther, if not as far out into the water. Mother promised I could have the horse, Joffrey said. Tyrion was annoyed to see that the king had lifted the visor of his helm again. Doubtless the boy was cooking inside all that heavy steel, but the last thing he needed was some stray arrow punching through his nephew's eye. He clanged the visor shut. Keep that closed, your grace. Your sweet person is precious to us all. You don't want to spoil that pretty face either. The whores are yours. It was as good a time as any. Flinging more firepots down into burning ships seemed pointless. Joff had the antler men trussed up naked in the square below, antlers nailed to their heads. When they'd been brought before the Iron Throne for justice, he had promised to send them to Stannis. Man was not as heavy as a boulder or a cask of burning pitch. He was thrown a deal farther. Some of the gold cloaks had been wagering on whether the traders would fly all the way across the Blackwater. Be quick about it, your grace, he told Joffrey. We'll have the trebuchets throwing. We'll want the trebuchets throwing stones again soon enough. Even wildfire does not burn forever. So there's probably worth mentioning that this idea of the antler men having antlers nailed to them could be a reference to the Green Men potentially having Weirwood, which are Weirwood are arguably their gods, and having Weirwood stuck on their heads, and that would be so I think it's a song for Leah that has the the people you're like attaching their essentially their
Right.
god to their heads.
Yeah, I'm not a great hunter or anything, even though I am a recovering redneck. But memory serves that antlers have a light color to them, and weirwood is a light wood, and I would see that the a weirwood crown could be mistaken for actual real
Yeah,
antler.
and
Or over,
I can't remember if that's Preston or LML or both that have said that, but I'm sure one of them has talked about that.
yeah. Well, I mean, it could also even be that over time, how things slightly get skewed differently, or told differently, or remembered differently. That over time, that the weirwood crowns that resembled antlers and now are actual true antlers in certain people's minds.
Lady Thistle says that Stance's army started dealing meth in the Kingswood. That could also explain some of the explosions. Anyway, Joffrey hurried off happy, escorted by Sir Meryn, but Tyrion caught Sir Osmond by the wrist before he could follow. Whatever happens, keep him safe and keep him there. Is that understood? As you command, Sir Osmond smiled amiably. Tyrion had warned Trant and Kettleblack what would happen to them should any harm come to the king. And Joffrey had a dozen veteran goldcloaks waiting at the foot of the steps. I'm protecting your wretched bastard as well as I can, Cersei, he thought bitterly. So you do the same for all Yaya. No sooner was Joff off than a runner came panting up the steps. My lord, hurry! He threw himself to one knee. They've landed men on the tourney grounds, hundreds. They're bringing a ram up to the king's gate. Tyrion cursed and made for the steps with a rolling waddle. Podrick Payne waited below with their horses. They galloped off down River Row, Pod and Sir Mandon Moore coming hard behind him. The shuttered houses were steeped in green shadow, but there was no traffic to get in their way. Tyrion had commanded that the street be kept clear so the defenders could move quickly from one gate to the next. Even so, by the time they reached the King's Gate, you could hear a booming crash of wood on wood that told them the battering ram had been brought into play. The groaning of the great hinges sounded like the moans of a dying giant. Breaking Baratheon coming this fall. So the wall is a hinge, and the Great Battle of the Wall included a dying giant, and so I think both battles are supposed to foreshadow the wall coming down. Right?
There's actually a lot of foreshadowing that the wall's coming down.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I know it's been the moon meteor theories and all that stuff. I think what causes the long night is the wall falling down. All that ice crystals and earth that gets displaced from 300 miles, 700 feet of ice hitting the ground into the atmosphere will cause a nuclear winter without the nuclear part of it. So
sure, but I mean the whole cause of nuclear winter really isn't about the radiation; it's about the dust, right?
Right,
it's about the amount of dust that would be in the air and it blocking out the sun for decades.
I mean, just the ice alone shattering, all that ice crystals into the atmosphere would reflect a lot of sunlight back out of the atmosphere. And then you throw dust particles and
I actually think it's going to be very ambiguous, and there's going to be lots of things happening at once. So I kind of think he's going to time like possibly Jon's resurrection, possibly the burning of Shireen, the blowing of the horn, the releasing of the ice dragon that's powering the wall coming down. Like I think basically everything's going to happen at about the same time. It's not going to be clear which events were related to what, right? Because he likes ambiguity.
I do believe that we will see the wall fall from the top of the tower at Old Town, because it's referred that you can see the wall from the tower.
It's probably a reference to the glass candles being at Old Town, but yeah, that's in the prologue of Feast, right?
Right. So I have a hard time believing that just from the curvature of the earth and all that kind of stuff, but this is fantasy science, so I'm fine with being able to see the wall physically with like a uh, uh, a scope for like a, I mean, being able to see the wall and then somebody's reaction uh, from seeing the wall fall from the high tower. But the only way we get that is if Sam goes to the top of the high tower, because we're not going to get any new point of views supposedly
Right.
in Winter. Sorry.
Right. Right. The gatehouse square was littered with the wounded, but he saw lines of horses as well, not all of them hurt, but sellswords and gold cloaks enough to form a strong column. Form up, he shouted as he leapt to the ground. The gate moved under the impact of another blow. Who commands here? You're going out. No. A shadow detached itself from the shadow of the wall to become a tall man in dark gray armor. Sandor Clegane wrenched off his helm with both hands and let it fall to the ground. The steel was scorched and dented. The left ear of the snarling hound sheared off. The gash above one eye had sent a wash of blood down across the hound's old burn scars, masking half his face. Yes, Tyrion faced him. Clegane's breath came ragged. Bugger that! And you! A sellsword stepped up beside him. We've been out 3 times. Half our men are killed or hurt. Wildfire bursting all around us. Horses screaming like men and men like horses. Did you think we hired you to fight an attorney? Shall I bring you a nice iced milk and a bowl of raspberries? No? Then get on your fucking horse. You too, dog. Kind of reminds me of Gallipoli, actually. There's a line where they say that the English are drinking tea. Anyway,
I do find it funny that the blood masking half his face across the hound's old burned scars.
Yeah, like it's specifically covering the scarred side of his face, right?
Right,
So
right. So you don't see the scar side, you see blood, but we also have blood running down Arya's face when she gets a new face put on. And then we also, thanks to Toodles, believe that the hound has a new face. It's just not the same type that Arya had. It is the ruby glamour kind.
right.
I just thought that was. I mean, like I said, anytime I see certain wordings or phrases from George, I always wonder why he puts them in there. And that half his face being covered, the bad part, just made me think of Arya and then think of him being glamour. Sorry.
Lizzie says, "Don't we see the direwolves detached from walls like shadows? Interesting. We see the same wording with the hound, even down to the gray. Yeah,
Well, I mean,
actually that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, well, we do strongly believe that Sandor Clegane is a skin changer. He definitely skin changes his horse, and then it's theorized that later he will actually skin change the hound that's at the Quiet Isle. When he's the grave digger, his horse is tied up, and then he's got the hound around him.
Talking about dog?
Where's that? Brother Maribal, whatever his name is, the hound
Maribal,
with him.
Septon Maribal.
Septon Maribal.
Dog.
Yeah,
his name's Dog. The dog's name is Dog.
Well, yeah, but you also get Sandor Clegane getting called Dog all the time.
Oh,
so,
yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
yeah, it makes sense.
Okay.
Anyway, that's an interesting observation, Lizzie. The blood on Clegane's face glistened red, but his eyes showed white. He drew his long sword. He is afraid, Tyrion realized, shocked. The hound is frightened. He tried to explain their need. They've taken a ram to the gate. You can hear them. We need to disperse them. Open the gates. When they rush inside, surround them and kill them. The hound thrust the point of his longsword into the ground and leaned upon the pommel, swaying. I've lost half my men, horse as well. I'm not taking more into that fire. So Man and Moore moved to Tyrion's side, immaculate in his enameled white plate. The king's hand commands you. Bugger the king's hand. Where the hound's face was not sticky with blood, it was pale as milk. Someone bring me a drink. A gold cloak officer handed him a cup. Clegane took a swallow, spit it out, flung the cup away. Water? Fuck your water. Bring me wine. Weirwood comparison is. Oh yeah. You're right. Of course, right. He's got the scars that are on his face.
It's
the
blood red
cuts,
and the other's
cuts
white.
are often, the cuts that remain or what remains after cuts is scars. Yeah, there's blood on his face. His face. Yep. You're right, Lizzie.
Yeah. Also, the blood part is sticky, meaning that it's drying, and then the sap on the weirwood tree is dried sap that makes it look like blood.
He's gray, but it's probably dirty white, right? He's probably, because he's a king's guard, so it's probably dirty white, actually, right? So
the armor or just his cloak?
Perhaps all of it. I'm just speculating. You don't think
Yeah,
so?
I don't think
You
the
think this
Hound
was
would
Graham?
wear. Yeah, I don't think he would wear the white armor. I think he would wear his
Yeah, you could be
trusted.
right. I mean,
Yeah, he's not one.
Jamie kind of talks about that, right? He's like when you're not actually actively defending, you don't wear it, but people don't even bother to mention the fact that
Well,
I
I don't think
was.
he owns any white armor. I think that he's the type not to put on airs if
Yeah.
he had to. If he could
Okay.
go around without actually wearing the white cloak, I think he would too.
Mm.
Uh,
He is dead on his feet. Tyrion could see it now. The wound, the fire. He's done. I need to find someone else. But who? Sir Mandon? He looked at the men and knew it would not do. Clegane's fear had shaken them. Without a leader, they would refuse as well. And Sir Mandon, a dangerous man, Jamie said, yes, but not a man other men would follow. In the distance, Tyrion heard another great crash. Above the walls, the darkening sky was awash with sheets of green and orange light. How long could the gate hold? This is madness, he thought. What madness is this? Anyway, yes, that's a reference. But sooner madness than defeat. Defeat is death and shame. Very well, I'll lead the sortie. If you thought that would shame the Hound back to valor, he was wrong. Clegane only laughed. You? Tyrion could see the disbelief on their faces. Me. Sir Mandon, you'll bear the king's banner. Pod my helm, the boy ran to obey. The Hound leaned on that notched and blood-streaked sword and looked at him with those wide white eyes. Sir Mandon helped Tyrion mount up again. Form up, he shouted, his big red stallion work. Krynet? I looked up the pronunciation now, I forgot what it was. Krynet and Chamfron. Those are both different armor types of swords. I mean, of horses.
yeah.
Crimson silk draped his hindquarters over a coat of mail. The high saddle was gilded. Podrick Payne handed up helm and shield, heavy oak emblazoned with a golden hand on red, surrounded by small golden lions. He walked his horse in a circle, looking at the little force of men. Only a handful had responded to his command, no more than 20. They sat their horses with eyes as white as the hound's. He looked contemptuously at the others, the knights and sellswords who had ridden with Clegane. They say I'm half a man, he said. What does that make a lot of you? That shamed them well enough. A knight mounted, helmetless, and rode to join the others. That kind of sounds backwards, doesn't it, given the symbolism that George does like to flip things around periodically.
Yeah. What does Lizzie say?
Lizzie says, a king's guard in white that refuses to be a knight is like when a woman who's not a virgin wears white on her wedding day. Arius Oakhart whispers, I can't believe he's wearing white. Yeah, that makes sense. A pair of sellswords followed, then more. The Kingsgate shuddered again. In a few moments, the size of Tyrion's command had doubled. He had them trapped. If I fight, they must do the same, or they are less than dwarves. You won't hear me shout out Joffrey's name, he told them. You won't hear me yell for Castle Rock either. This is your city Stannis means to sack, and that's your gate he's bringing down. So come with me and kill the son of a bitch. Tyrion unsheathed his axe, wheeled the stallion around, and trotted toward the sally port. He thought they were following, but never dared to look. Up next, Clash 60, Sansa 6. He's here for us.
I know.
So I do want to talk about Arya and Nymeria, but anything else you want to talk about first?
Yeah. Tyrion's definitely not a coward and would prefer to use his mind versus his physical body. But I mean, we've seen him. This will be the second time that he's gone into battle, and for a man that's under 4 feet tall, that definitely doesn't have a wide swinging radius or the arm strength to wield axes and swords and all that kind of stuff. He's pretty brave. I mean, I know a man can only be brave if he's afraid, but I mean, we're in his mind. Fear doesn't seem to come into play here. It's just this is what needs to be done. I'm the only one that can do it.
Right.
I need that's the Jamie in him that I see from time to time. I mean, my hat goes off to him. He does a really good job at this. So I don't think he's given enough credit for how brave he actually is. Yes, he has great plot armor. I was watching a video. I forget the name of it, and it's talking about one of the nastiest men that the Airborne has ever seen. This is during World War I, and the guy's name is McNasty McMasters or something like that. I forget his name, but it's the one. If you've ever watched any footage of it, that the guys that shaved their heads in mohawk and had war paint on, they didn't realize that the camera was filming, and they put the blackout uh, uh, grease on their face to cut shine and stuff like that for fighting at night and everything. And they had just painted a white stripe down the ship that they were getting ready to go on. And the guy that led, I think it's called it's the one that the Dirty Dozen was based on. It's the Nasty 13 or something like that, or the Filthy 13. They're the worst of the worst people, but they're the best at what they do, kind of like Wolverine and Jamie. So he takes his finger and goes down the paint, and he's part Indian, so he starts putting white markings on all the men, all 13 of them, to just make them look that more badass. And the guy actually jumped out of an airplane 4 times during World War One. Never lost a battle. Him and 35 men made 700 Germans surrender to them. I mean, the dude's just complete badass. Every time they had to leave, he'd get in a fight with MPs, get thrown in the. I mean, they hated him. They kept giving him the most dangerous missions they could. He thought they were trying to kill him, but I mean, the dude's just a badass, and he was. I mean, he wasn't much bigger than I am. I mean, just I for some reason talking about him being brave just made me think of watching that video. And here's this guy that the only reason he joined, he says, "I'm not saluting you. I ain't calling you sir. I didn't join for that shit. I'm just here to kill people." I mean, just a real bad. I don't know. Sorry, I went off on a rant there. But go ahead with your argument.
Oh yeah. So anyway, I was actually telling you that before the episode that I wanted to talk about this. It's just a thought I had that and I don't know, it's relatively obvious maybe. So maybe everybody else has already had this thought, but when we're told that Davos has to bring back Shaggy Dog because otherwise nobody would recognize Rickon, and I was thinking about that as potentially foreshadowing, right? And well, the only person who could really foreshadow would be Arya, right? So you could see Arya potentially getting back and nobody believing her.
Filthy 13. Yeah. Thank you, Pod.
You could see we never did read Lizzie's in some chapters. Tyrion Lannister stands as tall as a king. Also the plot armor reminds me of our Twitter exchange. But anyway.
Oh yeah, that's why I remembered saying it. I'm sorry. The plot armor, because the guy kept saying this guy's going in battle with plot armor, and he didn't know he had it on, and kept coming back. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So anyway, the point is, it probably would make most sense for that to be foreshadowing for Arya getting back and nobody recognizing her, right? She's and you sort of see that portrayed in the TV show too, right? So it feels like the idea that Arya is going to get back to Winterfell and nobody's going to recognize her is something that maybe was not something that Dan and Dave came up with. That's really something that's going to happen, and that perhaps she will decide that she needs to go get Nymeria in order to establish her identity potentially. Anyway, just a thought.
Yeah, and then when he told me that, I'm like, well, we got to remember the last time Arya was in the North, one of her nicknames was Arya Horseface or something like that. And as she's in Bravos and getting older, she's becoming more beautiful and more like Lyanna, just more beautiful and more beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, the 2 times you most change are when you get into puberty and when you're really young, and Rickon is gone from everybody while he's really young, and Arya is gone from everybody as she's entering puberty. So you could really see that there's going to be some significant changes in these characters, and nobody was around to see happen, right? So
yeah.
So the idea that they really need their wolf to establish their identity really makes a lot of sense.
Well, I mean, just look at Maisie Williams from season 1 Arya, the first episode Arya, to the season that shall not be named that rhymes with weight. I mean, they kind of don't look like the same person. I mean, they kind of look like sisters because she's changed. So what is that?
Lizzie's allegedly getting older. Side eyes that 5-year gap, right?
Yeah,
The
I
fact that
know.
Arya really should have gone through most of puberty by the time she
Yeah,
gets back.
yeah. She should have. I mean, in George's world, she should have already flowered by the time she gets back to
Right.
right. And I, for one, wish that he was able to do that 5-year gap just to get out of that that age to
Yep.
where it
Yep.
is sometimes
Yep.
it's very uncomfortable to read sometimes.
Yeah, there's
Uh,
actually some quotes where he sort of implies that he intended Rickon to become a POV. Um, somebody dug up some old quotes of his where he basically is well, Rickon couldn't be a POV yet, but maybe I'm gonna age them up, and and it's like well, if I could have aged Rickon up, he would have been a POV. Like he said it a few times. Like he's really implied that he intended Rickon to become POV, which is pretty weird for naming somebody Shaggy Dog. Um, it's actually um, I hate to say it, but he arguably doesn't owe us an ending because he named a major character Shaggy Dog. Because that's the whole point of Shaggy Dog's story, but it doesn't really end.
well,
Anyway,
I mean,
um,
we as the watcher of the shows, especially with the time, the actor that played Rick in season one, and when he returned, you could tell it was the same person. You could tell it was the same actor right off the get go.
yeah,
But how many people in the North have physically seen little teeny tiny Rickon? And then this is what 3 years later. So if he was 3 or 4, now
well,
he's
that's
six or
definitely a running
seven.
theme in these books, right? Is that you can't really recognize people very well, especially in a world where nobody has photographs or video.
Thank you, Pod.
Yeah, yep. Pod said that he told D&D not to cut Rickon from the show because he was important. Yep. So he does have a
Yeah,
role
they
to
didn't
play.
cut him from the show. They just brought him back and killed him. Everyone knows you zigzag. Now, okay, this is getting on the Rickon thing. All right. In this household with Krista Crow and me, we are huge, not as huge as the person is in the book, huge fans of Great John and Small John Umber. We really love Great John Umber. The whole car starts smacking him. I mean, just the way my steak is tough. I lost a couple fingers. I mean, we love this character, and the actor that played Small John Umber in the show uh, is not a small guy by any means. He's bigger than the actor that played Tormund. But the fact that they brought him in on Ramsay's side and he beheaded Shaggy Dog pissed us off greatly. But
Yeah,
even though we hated what they did with the character and hated the character on the show, even though he's on the wrong side, when he says, "Who holds the North?" me and Chris get goosebumps, even though he's talking to the wrong side, just because of the actor, the phrase. I mean, it's just really
okay.
yeah, it's hard to at that
No, I get
point
it.
when he's saying that, even though he's saying it to Ramsey's side, it's I mean, we could make it a ringtone. It's we're huge Umber fans, so I know I went off on a little rant again.
No, that's fine. Hey, we
Hey,
got
you say
it's a
one
short
word
chapter. I'm
and
kind of
then I'm
surprised.
off.
It's a short chapter. I'm kind of surprised how long we took to go through it.
That's okay. I mean, I didn't
No,
mind.
it's
I
perfect.
actually
That's
did
perfect.
not remember. I thought we actually got a little bit more in this chapter, but that's okay. Now,
No, it's because it
speaking,
goes back and forth between the two characters, right?
yeah, I know I'm talking a little loud today. It might be because I had chocolate covered donut. Crow food, more like dog food. I know he's the wrong number. Yeah, that's true. But dude's badass, man. He's got obsidian. This is obsidian, right? He's got
Okay.
dragon glass in his eye. So does he see stuff through the dragon glass?
Maybe.
Maybe. But the hound, when he says bugger the whatever. In the show, my two favorite scenes that the hound has is when he says fuck the king. And when he's the chicken, you can yeah.
Yeah.
I know that's not in the books that way. I freaking love that scene. If any more words come out your cut mouth, I'm gonna have to eat every chicken. And I mean, it's just freaking awesome.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
love Rory, the his portrayal, and he wasn't a big actor. He'd been in a couple of movies. The was it Clash of the Titans? He played a small part. I mean, he's played small parts here and there. And when I mean, even in the pilot, I mean, even though they weren't quite sure what they're going to do with his hair yet and all that kind of stuff, he had a bigger bald spot in the pilot, not the pilot, but the remake pilot. Uh, his portrayal of the Hound, I think, is why one of the main reasons a lot of people love the Hound is because of his portrayal of the Hound in the show. It takes a character from the page and gives it so much depth. Uh, uh, he did such a good job. I don't know if it's because that was just an easy character to portray. I mean, I've seen him in a couple of things after, and it's not as good. He's not as good an actor, but I mean, he
Hot
was like
Fuzz, he was the art guy.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Pod, but and you say you don't watch movies. Every time we mention a movie on book club, he hasn't seen it. Um,
Really?
but I
We
mean,
saw
it's like he
he's
was.
the only one that saw Bridge Too Far. I brought it up.
Well, it's like it was like Tyrion is the perfect role for Peter Dinklage. It was like the Hound was the perfect role for Rory. I mean, it's almost like it was specifically written for that actor, even though it wasn't.
Sure.
All right, I'm done rambling. What does that
Archaic movies.
say? Hey, are you dissing Hot Fuzz?
Hot Fuzz, I don't watch bad movies.
What? Every movie I watch is good. Oh no, not every movie. I watched that new Flash movie. That's not a good movie. I got up and left 5 minutes into the movie and just happened to get back to the movie at the perfect time for the Flash to get to Wayne Manor. So
Or do you totally watch bad movies?
I also watched the Krista Crow bought the last Guardians of the Galaxy movie, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, and they watched it. Ended up having to send Carter out of the room because of some of the images is not appropriate for an 8-year-old. And then they finished watching it, and then I watched it. And as much as I love the first one, the third one is probably my favorite. It's a really good movie. James Gunn did a really good job for his departure from Marvel, which makes me. I know this isn't a Marvel DC channel, but his vision for the DC universe, which needs a ton of help because they suck.
Sure.
Even though he got rid of Henry Cavill, which broke mine and Chris's heart, but I mean, I can't sit back and nitpick some of the things he's done because he did such a good job on other things that I have faith that he's going to do a good job with the DCU. Not that that's, I mean, we're not a comic book channel, but that it was on my mind.
I mean,
Watching the other day.
There was a time when the most respected comic book movie would have been the original Superman with Christopher Reeve, and then there was a time not long after that when the most respected comic book movie would have been Tim Burton and the Batman movies, right?
Yeah,
Michael Keaton. So
yeah, and then it was
we're book nerds.
Burton
Nitpicky is how we show love.
Well, speaking, I mean, also after to get back to Marvel, Marvel made a really good decision to make an R-rated Blade movie with Wesley Snipes, which I think sparked some of their Hollywood power, which allowed them to move on to Spider-Man and X-Men and all that stuff because of the popularity that the Blade movie came out with. Even though after a while Wesley Snipes sucked, and the third one he was in the trailer more than he was on set, and it was a pain in the butt. And they used his stunt double in most of the scenes that you don't see Wesley Snipes' face. That's neither here nor there.
Reminds me of my brother referring to the movie where the movie where Steven Seagal dies right at the beginning. It's this his finest role.
Oh
What
yeah,
was that?
yeah, yeah. It had Kurt Russell in it,
Yeah, yeah.
and John.
Anyway,
There was whatever his name is, and Halle Berry.
executive decision. Anyway,
Was that it?
yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, it's a he's he's in, he's like in all the advertising for it, though they like, kill him at the very
Oh, the John Leguizamo or whatever his name is.
beginning.
He says that Steven Seagal he came in there just as a dick. Yeah. Well, I knew
Yeah,
Pop would know. Yeah.
of course.
He just came in and was just a. I mean, I think John said he put him up against pressed him up against the wall or something like that. Because I mean, I don't know. And then real martial artists will just sit there and bash Steven Seagal left and right that his martial art.
I thought you really did teach.
Aikido, they say, is not a true martial art. It is the people that you are touching in the displays at tournaments and stuff like that are trained to do the rolls and the flips that you're supposedly causing them to do. And
It's like judo.
Yeah, well, judo is a true form of martial arts when you compete.
No, it's not. They even teach you right at the beginning. I took judo for a while. They even teach you right at the beginning. This is not a martial art. It's basically a form of wrestling, essentially.
Wrestling standing up.
Yeah. He did a cop show. Makes a huge ass of himself there too.
Yeah, I saw that too. I was like, oh my goodness. Yeah, I don't have a. I mean, now granted, growing up, Steven Seagal was a badass in the movies and Marked for Death and all that stuff. Above the Law. I mean, these movies came out, and I was like glued to it because I thought it was bad. I mean,
yeah.
His
they
style.
all have that rhythm too. Above the law, Marked for Death. Right?
Oh yeah.
It's like even the names of the movies felt formulaic.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, they had their system down. It's like Jean-Claude Van Damme. I mean, until he made what was it? Nowhere to Run with Patricia Arquette, or no, not Patricia Arquette, her sister, Rosa Arquette, Roseanne Arquette.
Yeah.
Nowhere to Run was the start of the downslide of Jean-Claude's movie career. Then he came out with one with Mickey Rourke as the bad guy, and then was that the Double Team with
someone on Reddit had been talking about Dolph, and I think the question was what celebrity is the opposite of somebody you thought was, some people talk about how they thought the celebrities were deep, and then they got to know them and they realized that they were clueless. And he said who's the opposite, and people were like Dolph Lundgren.
Yeah.
And they mentioned his TEDx talk, so I went and watched his TEDx talk recently. Anyway, thinking about that, because one of he brings up the Expendables as kind of bringing him back into Hollywood and so forth.
We need to talk. Also, Aikido is a martial art, so
is judo.
Yeah. What I'm saying that
my judo instructor told me.
Yeah. They're calling Steven Seagal not a martial artist.
Yeah, I would disagree, but okay.
Well, they had a wrestler choke him out and made him poop his pants.
Well, one thing we can agree on: Dolph Lundgren was European champion, European karate champion, so he knew what he was doing.
Yes, he was. Yes, definitely knew what he was. He's a genius though, isn't he? He's extremely intelligent.
He's like a master's in chemie with, and he was like a Fulbright scholar in Oxford and all that, MIT. Yeah, he was definitely a smart guy.
Yeah. All right. Well, before Pod kills us on the martial arts, I guess we need to go. We're right at 15 minutes. I'm not saying Aikido is fake. I'm saying that the majority of the martial arts community consider Steven Seagal fake.
But not Dolph.
Not Dolph. Well, I mean, Steven Seagal had talked about that he was in the CIA and all these things and did all this stuff, and
That's just Steven's face.
Chuck Norris pops out of his ponytail and roundhouse kicks you. Now, Chuck Norris is without a doubt a real martial artist. Granted, he's like 80 something, and he can still probably whoop my butt. Martial doesn't mean
actually,
punches and kicks.
You know who his sparring partner was? It's kind of funny because in Happy Gilmore, like Bob Barker kicks Adam Sandler's butt. Bob Barker was Chuck Norris's sparring partner.
Oh,
he
wow.
probably would have kicked his butt. He's like a Bob Barker. Yeah, you don't think of Bob Barker as like this guy who would kick somebody's butt. That's kind of the point of the movie and why it's a joke. But then if you actually learn, well, no, he actually would kick his butt.
All right. Well, before Pod kicks our butt, let's go. I'll probably hear about it at book club. I'm sorry, Pod. I just now, as an adult, not enthralled in the movie magic and everything.
The point of my judo instructor was he's like, if you're here to try and be able to beat people up, this is not going to work. That was his point. Yeah. But
now judo transfers
generically. Martial means combat. That's what it means, and so it's doing combat as an art, and therefore it's martial arts. So he's got a valid point in that the literal definition is that it's doing that, right? But
right. I mean, martial arts goes to historical European martial arts. HEMA. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean an Oriental fighting style. It covers a lot. I'm a judo instructor for the mind. Yes, you are. Without that. Now, judo, from what I've seen, especially from Ronda Rousey when she was, or I think it's her name, when she was before she got her tail whooped there at the end, her background was judo, and this girl, I mean, in a half a second, in the blink of an eye, could take somebody off their feet and put them on their back. I mean, and it was the judo background, just like a wrestler background, the core strength that it gives you, the instincts to move certain ways, they translate to the octagon. UFC, some say maesters are the judo instructors for the mind. All right, now
yes, I realized you were referencing the maesters when you said that. I got it.
Okay. All right. Well, before we dig any more of a hole with Pod, I'm sorry, Pod. Please forgive me. I won't mention it again. Before that happens, we're going to go ahead and go. We got Sansa 6 for Monday. Next Wednesday, I have to be out at the land between 11 and 1 o'clock waiting for a storage building to be delivered. So there will be no video next week. I'm not defending
Seagal, but Aikido.
Yeah,
sure.
I can agree with that. Jiu-Jitsu is most popular. Yes, it is, without a doubt.
My congresswoman used to be a mixed martial arts fighter.
Yeah, Gracie is a real big influence on why Jiu-Jitsu, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, is such a staple for mixed martial arts. Most of your better fighters start out with the Jiu-Jitsu background and then work their way to develop a stand-up or anything like that. But if their background is wrestling or jiu-jitsu, they want to go to the mat as soon as possible. There's a couple of them that are just, I don't care. This person's a stand-up. I'm gonna whoop his butt. I'll stand up with him. Some of them win, some of them don't. But all right. What's the point? It's defense. There you go. I forgot what I was saying. All right, Monday is Sansa. Wednesday, no video. I will take a picture of the building once it gets out there to the trailer, because I'm very happy. We got a really good price on it. I'm tickled pink. So Monday, Sansa 6. And it's like Friday. Every Friday, I tell everybody to have a good weekend. Aw. I'm surprised Sammy wasn't the first one up there. There you go. Oh. All right. Well, speaking of Sammy, my cat that bites me has a doctor visit this afternoon at 5:00. Quick story. I put him in the kennel. He grabbed a gas soaked
Fuck yeah.
rag, put it in the kennel
Fuck
with
his
him.
land.
I went to try to get the rag out of the kennel, and then he took off and I couldn't catch him again, so I had to reschedule for the day at 5. But okay,
I
see you on
think my
Monday.
camera got thrown off by the brightness of Sammy's coat or something and decided it
Yes.
needed to be darker. That was
Yeah,
weird.
Sammy's so cool. He needs to wear sunglasses all day long. All right, everybody have a good weekend, safe weekend. We appreciate y'all here. Book club, I will see you tonight between 8:00 and 10:00. Chris tried to tell me all the chapters for tonight, and I'm like, no, just tell me the first one, because I leave at 10, and then I told him chances are y'all never make it to the second chapter. But we'll see everybody on Monday. Y'all be good. Have a good weekend.
Have a good one.
Bye, Richard.